I'm actually going to read a little bit of a novel in progress that is quite literally titled The Map Thief. And then the narrator's a man, just to give you that, since you won't kind of get there on your own probably. I don't know which of the bewildered thoughts came first, as I realized that the map in front of me was not the one I'd come to see. There were too many obvious details, especially to my educated eye. For one, as I pulled it out of the protective sheath, the weight of it was not right. I focused my magnifying glass on the edge of the folio. It was a perfect seam, but the glue a bit too shiny, and as I leaned in and sniffed, its fresh smell was a dead giveaway. But it was the correct combination, the proper formula for a 16th century map bound into a folio, horse glue mixed with 1/18 of a beetle-derived shellac, ground in a pot made of clay from the Thames. The lines were well drawn. The ink was the correct hue and saturation, a good enough reproduction, and perhaps, had enough time passed, no one would have noticed that the original had gone missing. Seeing a well-executed reproduction of an antique map was familiar enough. What was difficult to acknowledge, what made my head spin, was admitting that the map I was looking at was my own handiwork. I had come to compare the one that I was replicating in my workshop to the authentic one in the library, only to find that in a bizarre and perplexing twist, my version was here instead. How that happened was terrifying to imagine. These fantastical types of maps were only beginning to come into vogue, certainly not as collectible or as desirable as those maps which made up the world we know, the ones that became fact, drawn and documented history, those ones with the dragon sulking around the edges of the ocean and coy sirens slinking on treacherous rocks. Maps that came with discovery and conquest, the New World, Egypt, battlegrounds. These are the maps that libraries and museums go to extraordinary methods to guard against theft. But the ones that were pure folly, pure conjecture, they don't have enough value to the collector to cause libraries to waste their limited resources on ever more expensive and complex security procedures. And yet, here was proof that someone had cared enough to steal the original. Now, no matter how innocent my intentions may have been, I would be implicated in the theft. And then this is kind of like moving on to a later chapter. Isabel asked me to meet her at the Waldorf Astoria at 3. I'm in no hurry because I know she'll be late. She's one of those people who consider being 10 minutes late on time and 30 minutes late something to casually apologize for. I'm not trying to let the anxiety ruin my enjoyment of the gorgeous late March weather. The newly planted tulips in the median of Park Avenue are in perfect form, erect in bright red like Royal Palace guards. And although it is warm enough that I have my coat draped over my arm, the matrons of the Upper East Side are out in full fur force, draped in mink and seal, a last hurrah for the luxury coats, which according to traditions like never wearing white after Labor Day, must be placed in storage by April. The entrance to the Waldorf Astoria is buzzing with cabs dropping off and picking up passengers. It's just before high tea, a time for fervent tourist and native activity. As the heavy glass door pushes out and the doorman steps aside, I walk into the lobby. Isabel said to meet at Sir Harry's, a bar in the lobby. To my surprise, she was already there, sitting at a table facing the door, tapping her finger on a thin folder. Isabel, I hand my coat to a waiter who rushes in to whisk it away. You're early for once. It's not that I don't try to be on time, she sniffs. I just don't always have the cooperation of the world. She smiles and reaches her hand out to me. I cup it between my palms. It's clammy and her nails are bitten to the quick. You said it was urgent. Yes, she says relieved. Have you seen this? She flicks the folder open. It contains one newspaper clipping. Map stolen from Yale Library turns out to be a forgery. I'd already read it that morning, but studied again for Isabel's benefit. The article is accompanied by a photo of so-called rare books an antiquarian maps auction consultant, a man with a bulbous nose and a vein-charted face, who leans against a row of books, standing with his arms crossed over his tweed suit. The photo was taken with a fish-eyed lens, so the crowded, floor-to-ceiling rows of umber and ochre spines stretched behind him. His smirk implies, "I read all these." I think half those books are stolen. My perception of the world is much more sinister than it used to be. "You know him?" she asks. Casually, at a symposium, we talk briefly. He wanted my advice on a new diode light technique for dating pigments. But look at him. His expression, those crossed arms, his face half in shadow, as if the journalist is implying he's hiding something. Maybe he's camera shy. Isabel purses her lips and turns the page towards her. I think he looks boastful. 1 foot forward, chest out. Yeah, boastful, but hesitant. I decide to push it. The tell is where he's standing, in front of the stacks. He's showing off. If he were sitting behind a desk, he'd look more trustworthy. But doesn't the photographer post the shot? He should know better, I say, silently pleased. The less credible Samuel Turner appears, the safer I feel. I consider the article on the table between us. How soon till the map ends up in the forensic lab? Are the teeth of a knife as telling as dental records? Does the powder of a latex glove leave dust tracks, like a trail of breadcrumbs? Especially since my forgery was never meant to be, well, a forgery, but a challenge to myself. I wanted to know how close I could get. In fact, it was a surprise the detectives had not already come knocking. After all, I spent so much time in that library looking at that particular map. Why hadn't they at least called for the counsel of my expertise? It made me more nervous, but I knew why. The hand of an old friend was all over it. How unexpected, I thought. Librarians are not often caught up in such cloak and dagger. That's it.